Albert Ellis coined one of the most memorable terms in the history of psychotherapy: musturbation. The word was characteristically provocative. Ellis was not a man who avoided colorful language, but it pointed to something he considered the central mechanism of psychological suffering. Musturbation is the habit of converting preferences into demands, of upgrading "I would prefer" into "I must," "you should," and "the world has to." Ellis observed this pattern so consistently across his clinical work that he came to see it as the fundamental error in human thinking about emotion. People didn't just want things. They demanded them. And demands, unlike preferences, cannot tolerate disappointment. A preference that goes unmet produces disappointment. A demand that goes unmet produces catastrophe, condemnation, or despair. The word "should" is the diagnostic marker. Notice how often you use it in your inner monologue. I should be better at this by now. They should have known what I needed. This situation shouldn't be this hard. Each "should" is an assertion that reality is failing to conform to a requirement, not just falling short of a hope, but violating an obligation. Ellis traced the psychological consequences with clinical precision. The person who believes they should perform flawlessly doesn't just want to do well. They have transformed the desire into a demand, which means that any imperfection constitutes a fundamental violation. This belief produces anxiety before performance and self-condemnation after imperfection. It also, paradoxically, impairs performance. The weight of the demand generates exactly the kind of inhibiting anxiety that prevents optimal execution. The person who believes that others should treat them fairly doesn't just prefer decent treatment. They carry an implicit contract with the world that fair treatment is obligatory, and when the world violates that contract, the emotional response isn't the frustration appropriate to a preference but the rage appropriate to a moral outrage. Relationships deteriorate under the pressure of these demands. Other people reliably fail to meet them, because the demands are unrealistic and because people can sense when they are expected to conform to a standard they never agreed to. Ellis's therapeutic approach was unusual for its time in that it targeted not just thought content but philosophical orientation. He wanted his patients to understand, at a deep level, that the universe was not organized around their requirements. People were fallible. Conditions were often uncomfortable. Outcomes were frequently disappointing. None of this was a catastrophe. It was ordinary human experience. The demand that it be otherwise was not just irrational. It was the primary generator of unnecessary suffering. His prescription was what he called unconditional acceptance, of self, of others, and of life. Unconditional self-acceptance doesn't mean approval of everything you do. It means recognizing that your worth as a person is not contingent on your performance or on others' opinions of you. Unconditional acceptance of others doesn't mean approving of their behavior. It means refusing to globally condemn them as people on the basis of specific actions. Unconditional acceptance of life means engaging with its difficulty rather than demanding that it comply with your preferences. The shift from demands to preferences is not passive resignation. It is an active philosophical stance, a refusal to let the gap between what is and what you would prefer become the source of ongoing crisis. Ellis lived what he preached. He worked well into his 80s, famously continuing to see patients, run workshops, and write until shortly before his death at 93. He seemed, those who knew him agreed, genuinely at peace with the fact that the world was exactly as difficult as it was. Subscribe to Psychology Theories Explained to explore more of the ideas that shaped the modern mind.